Frank, what's the weirdest thing you've ever saw in here?
Let me ask you a question, kid. Did you see that movie, Night of the Living Dead?
Hey, we gonna party tonight or what?
Yeah, we are gonna party.
Well, where are we gonna party?
I don't know, somewhere.
Hey, we could go to the park.
Oh, no, we can't. The cops said they'd shoot us if we go back to the park.
Yeah, and I ain't in no mood to die tonight.
I like death.
Greetings, ghouls, and welcome to minute 33 of Do You Want to Party? A Movies by Minute podcast for the 1985 groundbreaking horror classic, The Return of the Living Dead. I'm your host, Troy, and for this episode, I'm being joined by yet another member of the Movies by Minute community.
Hi there. I'm Dave Forsythe. I'm one of the co-hosts of Edge of Tomorrow Minute.
Excellent. Now that's currently going on. How far are you into it right now?
Oh, we are done.
Oh, you're done.
Fully,
Okay.
fully done. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. I tried to follow up on as many of like what I can find, but I'm like, I'm not sure what you're currently working on. Are you working on anything currently or
yeah, not really a Movies by Minute, but we do have another couple ones waiting. So
excellent.
As soon as they finish up with this one, you'll see more Movies by Minutes from us.
You all podcasters always have something on the back burner.
That's right.
Yeah. So to begin with, how did you come about Return of the Living Dead? When was your first experience with this movie?
Oh man, it had to be whenever it hit VHS for sure.
Okay.
I was one of those kids that haunted the VHS store every, whatever day it was. It's probably Wednesday or Thursday nights. I would go and you could get 5 movies for 5 days for $5, right?
Right.
As long as they weren't new releases. So
yes, exactly.
we'd generally go load up, and it was usually like some kind of actiony something, some kind of horror something, some kind of bikini something, because it was like 10
you
or
always
12
try
or
and
whatever.
sneak one of those in there.
That's right. And so yeah, and some probably a comedy, a lot of stand-up comedies or like your teen romp comedy type things.
Yeah.
So I know I had seen this as a youngster, and it definitely did not really register with me what this movie really was about or what it was doing until post-college. I think I didn't see it probably for maybe 15 years.
Right. Okay.
And then when I saw it again later at my buddy's house, and I remember he lived in Olympia, Washington, and I was visiting him. We would always watch terrible movies. And we put this on and I was like, hey, this isn't a terrible movie. This is a great movie. And, so like he was a big Troma fan. So like,
gotcha.
that level of stuff.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah.
Like, a lot of things came to light for me for this movie, having seen it that time that I just did not realize as a kid. So
yeah. That seems to be the way it's going. Like your first viewing, you're blown away by like the look of the film, the makeup, the nudity and all that sort of thing. Because it seems to always hit people, like especially young males at that appropriate age to see the nudity throughout the movie and all that sort of thing. But again, a lot of the subtle notes you don't catch until like a second or third viewing and all that sort of thing. And it's a beautifully layered movie that way. And going at this movie minute by minute, wow, there's a hell of a lot more than I had ever thought. Like, I mean, it's just a fascinating thing. And that's what you get from these movie by minute podcasts.
Oh yeah, for sure. It breaks it down. Like, you come into it thinking you're like, oh, I've done the research, I'm the expert on this, and then it just unveils all of its layers to you as you're like, oh, the connections, yeah.
And
I'm one of those people that likes to assume whether or not it's true that every decision in a movie was made by some skilled craftsman for some reason. Like even though some of it's probably like we had 4 minutes and $3 to do this, so this is how
exactly. Yeah. You hope that it was the decisions came by a skilled artisan or something like that. But yeah. All right, so we're just going to start into minute 33, which starts with it's not weasels and ends with don't even think it, Chuck. So we begin as Bert and Frank leave Ernie's side. who seems to look a little dejected at the moment. Frank goes to join Freddy while Bert goes back to his previous position of standing beside the stack of wriggling bags. Once there, Bert sets himself, and after deep, exhausted breaths, he mentions the falsehood of his previous statement.
It's not weasels in the bags.
As the camera cuts to Ernie, there's a slight fluttering synthesized music accenting this shot. While Bert and Frank aren't in the frame, Ernie's eyes go back and forth between them. He gives a slight chuckle and to prove his point, Bert leans into the frame.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
Cutting to a lower shot, Bert is hunched over the bags as he selects one and pulls it off the pile. Frank and Freddy, only seen from the waist down, just like Ernie, still leaning against the metal coffee machine table. Back to the solo shot of Ernie, his eyes widen, now fixed on the bag in Bert's hand. Again, the similar musical sting is heard. So we now have a close-up of the bag being held by Bert. His one hand opens the green plastic to reveal the yellow arm and hand. Once exposed to the light of the room, its fingers flutter and the arm tries to reach or jump out of the bag. This is accented with a low piano sound. This clearly is the old fake arm that is real arm illusion, where a second person stands directly behind Clu Gallagher with his arm, hand and arm painted yellow, and reaches out of the bag. The shot itself is extremely short as we cut to a close-up of Ernie's, whose eyes widen even bigger than before. Then a wide shot of the four gentlemen. The more elaborate version of the synthesized music still plays now. Instead of just a sting, it's a medley playing. Freddy watches the bag as Bert tries to drop the severed arm from the bag. As the arm starts to leave the garbage bag, Frank briefly looks away. He also looks slightly towards Freddy. As the arm exits the bag, Ernie gives a startled jump back. Then a brief shot focuses on the now on the floor severed arm, moving independently. An out-of-focus bag held by Bert unblocks the shot, and the arm starts to bend at the elbow. And it's just a few inches from Ernie's tracksuit matching colored sneakers. Another close-up of Ernie shows his eyes tracking the limb. Then an extreme close-up of Ernie's lower leg and sneaker of his right side. The hand now grabs hold of his ankle area. Clearly an actual actor's hand grabbing Don Calfa. Unlike the preceding rubber-affected arm used. Ernie gives out a surprised shriek, eyes bulging in fear and anger. He demands assistance. Bert quickly dashes forward for assistance. Another close-up angle of the arm gripping Ernie's pant leg as Bert grabs it by the shoulder and wrist. Once again, an effects prop. Now screaming for its removal, Ernie tries hopping backwards on one leg, but Bert tries removing the gripped hand, which is so tight that Bert's efforts are lifting Ernie's leg off the floor. With a tearing sound, we see Ernie drop to the floor on his ass, catching himself with his arms propped behind him. After he reverse crab walks himself from the situation, we now hear Frank as his protests of the situation whining returns.
Frank!
A quick shot of Bert holding the arm in the air as Frank frantically opens the bag. Bert quickly releases it, and soon as it's within the bag, while now crying at the situation, Frank quickly fumbles the bag for a bit, then quickly twists the neck of the bag closed. Ernie is still seated as before, his leg now exposed from the pant leg being torn. Still obviously unsure of what just happened. Bert apologizes as he approaches his still down friend and attempts to help him up.
I'm sorry, Ernie.
Ernie tries to stand on his own and is in a very quick response, Freddy also practically leaps to Ernie's side to assist him. However, once standing, Ernie shakes off the help of the two men. Both back off as Ernie looks behind him to sit at the chair by his desk, the desk of which Bert now uses as a seat. Frank now joins the others as him and Bert share a glance. Ernie, now properly seated, removes his headphones from around his neck, unplugs them from the jack of his Walkman, then pulls the tape player from his front pocket of his tracksuit. Bert then settles down by informing Ernie about the lengthy tale that he's about to hear.
Ernie, we got a long story to tell you.
Jumping to the graveyard, Chuck and Casey sit outside the mausoleum with a simple door handle. Chuck blows out a lungful of smoke while Casey fans herself with a piece of cardboard. She mentions her disapproval with the situation and where two of the punks have gotten to.
Oh, great, some party. What happened to trash and suicide?
Chuck slyly remarks about the carnal activities they're probably getting up to.
Probably getting it on somewhere.
She turns her head to face Chuck and mentions how he should totally change his thought process.
Don't even think it, Chuck.
And that's where we come up to the end of this particular minute. So one of the unusual things about this particular minute is this 1 minute has had the most change of shots for the whole entire movie. Each minute has been maybe about 2, maybe 3 shots, maybe 5 at most. This one has 19 different cuts to different shots. Now it's like 4 or 5 shots, but the way it's edited together, it changes different angles and all that 19 times. It's so phonetically, frantically done and all that sort of thing. And again, it goes along with the way the situation is playing out itself. It's this high energy sort of like they want the quick shots and all that sort of thing. Also, it keeps you from seeing a lot of how the actual put together of some of the scenes are.
Yeah, part of it's pacing for sure, because like you said, they're trying to make it seem, I mean, there's an arm, right, attacking people, and it's got to have a little bit of pace and franticness to that. But yeah, the practicality of hiding what is making the arm actually be animated when it's doing anything other than wriggling it's a very practical sort of set of cuts there.
Yeah, exactly. So the switch between the rubber arm to the actual human arm to the one that actually maneuvers a little on the floor and all that sort of thing. But so it's just a whole lot of like quick edits and all that sort of thing. And like I said, the biggest one probably from what I can picture into the future of this minute, I believe this is the most edits, like scene cuts, like cut scenes in the movie. So it's just to keep it moving and all that.
There's a lot of people, like we've added an extra person into this scene as well, right? So before we had 3 people maximum, we now have a 4th, but like he's not just a 4th, like he's a 4th that's new to the situation. So like seeing his reactions is we essentially get 2 sets of shots back and forth from his face, and that's his first one's a little curious, a little annoyed, and like the second one is definitely like, what the fuck is going on?
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's watching the reactions play out across his face, I think, are necessary. Whether it required 2 cuts to do it, I don't know, but yeah, it's definitely to watch the journey, and it we know what's going on already
right
at this point, but to So he's not like an audience surrogate, but he's like the everyman surrogate. Like we testing the like how do you react to this thing that is unbelievable? Like what do you believe is happening in this unbelievable situation? And to put all those tests in his face right there in that moment is is fun. It's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I didn't even think of that. Yeah, because as the audience, we've already know what's going to happen because we've experienced the movie as like Frank and Freddie go through this. They're learning the rules of it and all that. And all of a sudden, Ernie is all of a sudden has this all dropped in his foot within like a 2-minute span. At least like Frank and Freddie and Bert. Yeah, literally his foot. Well, Frank, Freddie, and Bert have like been able to go step by step through this whole entire thing, but then to see someone newly exposed to all the information is just which is a great way to do it. And you also get a little bit of great character interaction, and you get, I mean, a little bit of like comedic beats to it as well that it would be missing in the previous little bit. But yeah, it's actually quite a clever way to have done this particular minute.
And Ernie's clearly a weirdo too, right? Like he's he's the nighttime morgue. I don't know if he's a mortician or what his role is, but like he's the guy running the morgue at night. He's wearing a monochrome jumpsuit, and he's got a pistol on his hip, right? I mean,
yep, he does. Yep.
That's atypical, I guess, unless you're the county coroner or something like that. You probably might have a badge and a gun, but he doesn't seem to be that guy, right? And he's got this bleach blonde hair, and he definitely feels like he belongs more with the punks than with this crew, right? Like he's got his Walkman on, and he probably wasn't listening to country and western, and and the more I sort of watch the minute with his environment, the weirder he gets, right? Because when they sit at his desk and they've got the shot of the bulletin board on the background, there's a target,
a shooting target. Yeah, range target. Yeah.
That's been used, right? It's got holes in it, and there's a picture. Is that Faye Dunaway from Bonnie and Clyde? Maybe.
No, it's Ava Braun.
Ah, okay. Oh wow. Okay, that's even weirder.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
If you look at the advertisement poster on the wall that's a little further along, it looks like it's a don't know what the ad is for, but it's a Nazi officer sitting at a table with a looks like he's playing a game of poker with the person who is viewing the whoever the person is looking at. It has a set of cards set in front of them. It's like a poker set in front of them that it looks like they're playing poker. So it's definitely a like, Nazi themed character. And yeah, so
interesting.
Yes, it is. Ernie is definitely an interesting character. Yeah. We went into the detail of his character a couple of minutes ago, but he definitely does. And the fact that him and Bert have known each other for 25 years.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's 1984 in this movie and like 25 years prior to that. So, I mean, yeah, so it's an interesting character that Ernie is. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And well, I mean, like, I don't know how to speculate about the mid 80s feelings on Nazism, but I think they were, I remember, again, I think it's probably just a function of being a person of that age, of that social status where, I always knew someone in junior high or high school who thought it was cool to be reading Mein Kampf or whatever, or have a little bit of Nazism fascination, right?
There's always that one kid in that. yeah, exactly. Or like his grandfather was into it and he just happened to absorb it through osmosis or something like that. Yeah.
So I mean, it felt a little, well, to me, like I said, being of a certain age back then, to be it was like a distant past sort of thing,
Yeah.
Whereas today Nazism feels like more of a living, breathing thing amongst us. But
unfortunately, yes.
Neither here nor there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
exactly.
But yeah, I think the Blues Brothers had the jokes about the Illinois Nazis and everything.
Yep.
So like it's a comedic principle in films of the time, I suppose.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah. And then a perfect example, Indiana Jones goes up against them in the first Raiders of the Lost Ark. I mean, they're the bad guys. The Nazis are the bad guys in three of the three. I guess Dial of Destiny has Nazis in it again. Yes,
sure. Yeah,
because it was Russians in the Crystal Skull. So right. All right. So over on the commentary track, which features director writer Dan O'Bannon and production designer William Stout. Dan O'Bannon mentions that at a sci-fi convention that he encountered some disgruntled fans asking about where the refrigeration room was for the embalming room, as real embalming rooms have them. And while they had never built one, thinking that no one would notice, but when confronted, Dan O'Bannon said that was behind the curtain area of the room. And he knew they weren't buying the excuse that they wanted. And Dan admits that they were right. And he regrets not actually including it. He then goes on to mention that while working with George Lucas, Dan O'Bannon had worked on the special effects for the first Star Wars movie, that Lucas had seen Dark Star, which was an early John Carpenter movie that Dan had worked on. The effect of the beach ball creature in Dark Star had disturbed Lucas. To O'Bannon, this was the most disturbed that at the time that he had seen Lucas. Dan mentioned how, yes, it was a beach ball, and it was the best they could do at the time. Lucas had wished it was better, and Dan seconded his statement. And that's about all for the commentary track for this particular minute.
It's a very Dan O'Bannon way to feel about a thing, I think, right? Like I don't think too many other people would feel bad about only building part of a set that was,
Yeah, exactly.
So.
Well, he also, like earlier in the movie, during the commentary track, when they're showing off the office sequence, when Frank and Freddie come to and they're panicked to figure out what we're going to do and all that sort of thing. He starts talking about how all the details of all the stuff shoved onto the shelves and all that sort of thing, and how he likes to, like a Mad magazine, how even in a Mad magazines, they like fill in like the frames of your pages with cartoons and all that sort of thing. So you get like just a smorgasbord of stuff that you're not going to see it all at once. But if you do see it, you know it's special because like, you picked out something that had been put there before. And I think he actually does regret the fact that like, well, yeah, I guess we could have put a freezer unit in there for the bodies, because you know what? Mortuaries do have those. And unfortunately they happen to skip it. And
yeah, this this doesn't have your feel of a typical morgue type situation anyway, right? Like it's very dirty, right? Like you would it's not the sort of pristine, ones that you come to see from your CSI police procedurals where they collect all the evidence, things like that, right? Like if somebody had brought a body into this morgue and then tried to pull any evidence off of it, you'd be like, well, this place is clearly contaminated. I'm going to win whatever case you find evidence with from this. But yeah,
exactly.
I mean, even, I'm trying to think of like other gritty morgue scenes, and I'm thinking of the one from Silence of the Lambs, and that one was grainy and gritty, but it certainly wasn't this sort of disorganized and dirty, right? It was still a very science place. This feels like, I don't know, a kitchen that hasn't been cleaned in a while.
Exactly.
It's not a serious science place. Let's put it that way.
No. But then again, you never know. In Louisville, maybe that's what all the embalming rooms look like, right?
That is a good thought. Yeah, for sure. I don't know what goes on in Kentucky, so
exactly. Okay, so according to the script, which is a story and screenplay by Dan O'Bannon, we're dealing with the revision from October of 1983, and this is based on the story and screenplay by John Russo, Rudy Rickey, and Russell Steiner. We'll just begin with the description of the scene, which is an interior mortuary embalming room night. we basically pick up in the middle of the conversation where Bert goes, "Well, Ernie, it's not rabid weasels in the bags." Ernie stares at the struggling sacks, grips his pistol. Bert goes over to one of the sacks and pulls loose the tape that holds it shut. He picks up the bag, opens it a little, revealing a hand. Clenching and unclenching. Ernie reacts. Bert picks up the bag and empties the contents onto the floor in front of Ernie. A human arm sawed off at the shoulder falls to the floor and starts writhing. Everyone stands and stares down for a frozen moment. Then it whips around like a blind snake and comes to contact with Ernie's ankle. It grabs Ernie's ankle and wraps itself around Ernie's leg. Ernie lets out a strangled scream and jumps back, trying to kick the thing off. Bert and the guys leap forward to start pulling it off of him. As it comes off, it holds onto the pant cuff, tearing his pant leg. Bert throws it back in the sack. Ernie is white and shaking, his pants cuff flopping. Bert, better sit down, Ernie. I got a long story to tell you. Cut to exterior, cemetery, night. Now, the one thing about the script that we have that we're dealing with, it does not have this Chuck and Casey interaction scene at all. When it cuts to the cemetery, the description is Dee Dee, who in the final film turns out to be Trash, is making love with suicide. Scuzz and Meat, Meat is actually turns out later to become Spider, are standing by swigging beers. So that's all that matches up for this particular minute of the script. So yeah, it's kind of neat to see a whole scene, like not, again, it's Dan O'Bannon. He wrote and directed, could have come up with something either the day of or after or something like that, or they decided they didn't want to film a sex scene between Trash and Suicide, and which is obviously because when you see in a minute Suicide walks by, obviously they were not getting it on, as the kids say.
And I wonder too, I mean, Chuck and Casey, neither of them are really what you would call featured players, I think, amongst the punks.
Yeah.
So this may have been a way to give them a little more
screen
time.
Maybe. A little more screen time. Yeah. I mean, once the ball gets rolling on this storyline, I mean, again, you've watched the movie, because there's no reason you'd be listening to a Movies by Minute if you haven't seen the movie. But once the Scooby Gang gets split up, Chuck and Casey deal with being alone for a little while by themselves and all that sort of thing. So yeah. So the other thing we do is the work print comparison, which again is the fully unedited version of everything they shot that they throw all together, and then eventually they splice it down to get down to our proper film. Our original film is just an hour and 31 minutes long. The work print without credits or opening credits is actually an hour and 47 minutes long. So it's kind of every once in a while, there's some extra stuff. And for example, in this particular minute, which is minute 32 to 33, the work print comparison actually goes from minute 37:12 to 38:24. So we actually get to see a little bit of extra. So for example, after the close-up of Ernie, but before Bert drops the arm from the bag, there's a two-shot of Frank and Freddie, who both look down towards the bag that Bert has opened. The shot of the struggling arm on the floor near Ernie's shoe is a tiny bit longer. And after the close-up of Ernie before the shot of the actual hand grabbing Ernie's pant leg, there's another shot of the arm, but it is slightly wriggling and rocking its way towards Ernie's shoe. And where in the final film, Bert tells Ernie about the story that they have to tell them, it cuts to Chuck and Casey, but the work print scene is a little longer. And as Bert looks towards his employees, as they, Frank and Freddie, now share a glance at each other. Then the cut to Chuck and Chasey, and that becomes the same as the final version of the film. So it's kind of, you see little bits and pieces, extended shots, extra stuff and whatnot. It's also kind of neat because there's no extra sound effects. Like there's no music added into it. The only sequence that had music was during Trash's striptease, and it was actually Nasty Girl by Vanity was playing at them. So she had music to dance to, which they then changed to SSQ doing the song and whatnot. But it's just kind of neat to see different extra things. Like there's a shot when they're first in the cemetery where Spider, Scuzz, and Casey are off on themselves exploring. So it's kind of neat to see some extra footage that never being a longtime fan of this too, because I'm also watching the work print by minute as well. So I just like watch until like just the minute that I'm going. So I'm experiencing new things as I get through this movie. So it's kind of neat. Yeah.
That's still pretty lean. You said an hour 47.
It definitely wasn't. It wasn't a long, but the comparison, because again, it doesn't have it. The work print starts off right on the shot of Unita, the Unita facility, the warehouse, right?
Yeah.
And it stops at the end of the film. So there's like an extra like 3 minutes of, there's like an extra like a minute before that, because it doesn't do because my version of the film, we did the opening with the lion and whatnot, and and then the so it's basically an hour and 45 minutes of actual movie without opening or closing credits. So it means it's a little bit longer than it is and all that sort of thing. So, but still, it's also just something fascinating to see. And again, it's little bits and pieces. It's a little extra that are just fascinating to see what they shot and what didn't make it. So, yeah.
And it seems, the 80s were the mid 80s, the late 80s, especially the prime VHS era. I think movies were very, it was very rare to see a mass market movie that wasn't between like 89 and 94 minutes.
Exactly.
They were all,
yes.
Like very, very tightly controlled. So, I don't know if it was just some technical limitation that maybe like if you went over a certain amount of minutes, you went to another reel or something that you had to ship, and it was just, movie companies didn't want to produce the extra cost or whatever, or
I never even thought of that. Yeah, that would make sense, because again, when it is reels, you would have to, because sometimes a movie would be too long to be on a single reel and all that sort of thing. So no, that's well, I hadn't actually thought of that.
It doesn't seem like it would be a limitation they made because of VHS, because
no,
the movies weren't being made with tape in mind really at that point.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, or maybe it was just the fashion, the attention span of the time that, like if a movie was 100 minutes, you're like, oh, look at that. That's a special movie,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, also, again, you don't want to, again, like you said, it's a formula thing, probably, because horror films of the era, I mean, nowadays you can sit there for a 3-hour like horror film and all that sort of thing, but like you want to keep your audience, like once you get into the action, you keep that going and going and going, before you know it, hey, an hour and a half has passed and everyone's leaving the theater, sort of thing. So
maybe it's just a function of what I was watching. I was watching a lot of genre stuff,
exactly. Yes.
Yeah. That's interesting. Can I also make a comment about the color of the skin of the arm?
Yes. Okay. Yes.
It's got that very sort of pea green sort of look to it. And as I was watching for the preparation of this, I noted that as being strange. And I don't know if that, I mean, zombies being green is not like that. It kind of makes sense, but I don't know if this would have been the first color movie I had seen with lots of zombies in it. I'm trying to think of what between the original Night of the Living Dead, and some of the weird, like, what was it? Was it Cat People with the like voodoo
Yes. Yeah. No, it would have been cat
yeah,
people. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I definitely hadn't seen any of the later Romero movies by this point. Not sure even when they came out, but and I hadn't seen the Savini Night of the Living Dead would still be another 5 or 6 years after
A
this.
couple of years. Yeah. Yeah. The
Yeah.
90s,
I think so. I
like
think it was
90, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
90,
Yeah. Yeah.
91.
Yeah.
So like seeing zombies in color was probably new or novel at least
Yeah.
at the time. So like, but this color still feels like it does a thing. I mean, this movie is solidly in the horror comedy genre, right? Like it's
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely. So I don't know if the color denotes a little bit of a comedic tone to it or not. I don't know.
Well,
What do you,
the character who's referred to as Yellow Man,
yeah.
is Dan O'Bannon had mentioned that he had looked through an actual catalog of different cadavers, and there were
Okay.
those that were used for medical experiments that were dyed a yellow to identify them as being used for certain things. So
Okay.
I think they said they got as close to what they saw in the books as possible to do this character in that color and all that sort of thing.
Interesting.
So
Okay,
that
so-
is, yeah.
So it's not a function of zombieism. It's a function of it
No,
being
it's a function of
medical
the
specimen.
basically, yeah, the specimen that they had. Yeah. So and that's another thing going into the trying to get this movie to feel as realistic as possible. Like,
Yeah.
especially when you talk about the split dogs. I mean,
Yeah.
while the split dogs are a fantastic effect and all that sort of thing, when you look closely at the split dog and are like, that's not really what the inside of a dog looks like, but
Right.
it's done as realistically as possible for the quick shot that you get to see and all that sort of thing. So it's, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I did not realize that they were really trying to match the medical
Yeah.
supply companies. Yeah, that's fun.
Or okay, or at least that's what Dan O'Bannon says in the commentary track
Sure.
about what Dan
Yeah.
O'Bannon decided to do, why the character turned out to be yellow. Yes.
Yeah,
So,
right,
yeah.
right.
All right. So that wraps up this particular minute of the podcast. So what is it that you mentioned that you have your movies by minute? What, like when was that actually? When did you do that?
Oh gosh, time has lost all meaning, so I can't accurately answer
Gotcha.
that question. But
Gotcha.
I feel like we wrapped it up about a year ago.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So when Edge of Tomorrow 2 was being bandied about, and they're like, we got a script, we got people, we're gonna make it. And then, pandemic stuff, and it has never been heard of since.
Right. Yeah.
So we were hoping to sort of cash in on some of that. Like 2 is coming out, we'll have this coming out and
Right.
available for people. And it didn't work out that way, but we definitely enjoyed it. If you don't know Edge of Tomorrow by name, you may know it as Live, Die, Repeat.
Live, Die, Repeat. Yes. Yeah. The
Yeah,
Tom
yeah.
Cruise,
Yeah,
Emily
it's-
Blunt. Yes. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it's sort of time loopy sci-fi
Yep.
guy.
Yep. Yep.
And a lot of it is about that movie. A lot of it is about, exploring the concept of looping time. And a lot of
Sweet.
it is about exploring our own personal relationships with Tom Cruise as an entity. So like, it's got a little something for everybody, I think.
Actually, that's actually quite a fascinating subject matter to begin with. Yeah, just Tom Cruise himself. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, one of my friends who appeared on the podcast who lived in Los Angeles, we talked a lot about Scientology and the cult of Scientology.
Okay.
In that episode, and then when I published it, he's like, "Oh, you left all that in, huh?" I was like, "Well, yeah, it doesn't affect me to say those things on the internet.
True,
If you wanna
true,
take it
yeah,
out,
yeah,
I'll take
yeah.
it out." But yeah, so yeah, we have some of that stuff going on in there too.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
Now, did you do was it like a daily or was it a weekly?
No, we were definitely a weekly.
Yeah.
I think we started out twice weekly, and even that was like, it's
Yeah.
too much for a hobby. I can't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we were weekly. So it took us the better part of 2 years to really get it all published and put out there with an
Right.
occasional like summer hiatus and whatnot. So yeah.
Mhm.
So let me ask you about, you said you sort of discovered this one on your own. Was the title Return of the Living Dead confusing to you at all in terms of like situating this movie in the like pantheon of other horror?
To be honest, I think I had seen prior to this, I had seen Dawn of the Dead.
Okay.
So I knew of the George A. Romero sort of oeuvre, his universe and all that sort of thing.
Right. Right.
When I and again, this was just a name in a book that said, hey, at this time this movie's on, so I set a VCR to record it and all that sort of thing, sat down and watch it. So basically I discovered the universe like they did, because at the beginning they say, hey, remember that movie The Return of the Living Dead, and how it was like it was based on real things, so they had to fake the stuff and all that sort of thing. So I really didn't get too much of a confusion and all that, because the movie tells you right along, and like that movie was a movie. This is real life. What you're watching now is real life sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it wasn't too much of a confusing sort of situation. So yeah.
I think there were two things about it that confused me as a youngster. First of all, I think in the mid 80s, if you made a movie with the word return in it, I was going to assume it was the third one in a trilogy, right?
Thank you, Star Wars.
Yeah, thank you. It's I didn't know any better. And also, like, if you have the words living dead in it, it's associated to all the other movies that have the word living dead in it. Which it turns out is not necessarily true.
No,
affiliated as a concept, not as a what we would call it, a property.
Yes.
Right. So yeah, for the longest time, I think I didn't fully understand that this A wasn't a sequel and B wasn't affiliated with the Romero stuff in any way. And
right.
Like if you watch the Romero stuff, like this it's a little goofy, but it could easily fit in there.
Yeah.
And so you could see why I might be a little confused, but yeah.
Oh no, for sure. Yeah.
So,
just to go into it a little bit, because George A. Romero and John Russo, who both wrote Night of the Living Dead together, when George wanted to go off and do a sequel, Dawn of the Dead, John Russo wanted to go in a different little area, like a different pattern for the storyline and all that. So they decided to amicably split. John was allowed to use the Living Dead portion of it, whereas Romero would be of the dead sort of thing. So that's when they split off and all that. And of course, obviously, one became a little more a little more popular at doing his films than someone else who and again, so yeah, John Russo wrote a novel that when someone bought the rights to it, and Dan O'Bannon got his hands on it and went, well, that's an interesting title. Let's rewrite this story to be what this movie turns out to be and all that sort of thing. So it's more of an homage. Like his is he admits that it's an homage to the George A. Romero universe and all that, but it is its own separate universe is what they're referring to it as, because I don't know if you're aware of this, but on December 15th, it was announced that there is going to be in 2025 at Christmas time, a Return of the Living Dead movie being released that in the UNITA universe takes place 18 months after the events of this particular movie.
Fantastic.
So yeah, so we have so while you were talking about Live Die Repeat, how part 2 is coming out, I'm actually kind of excited that I'm going to be still doing this podcast while that movie is in production and gets released and all that sort of thing. So I'll have a nice little, hopefully something comes out of that sort of thing if I grow this sucker a little bigger and all that sort of thing. But again, I'm up here in Canada, so I don't know whatever would happen and all that sort of thing, but still. Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of it's a neat prospect to know that something is out there, and the future is finally looking bright, because for a while there, the rights were up in the air as to 3 different groups of properties were claiming, hey, we have the rights and we have the rights. So over the past couple of years, it's been up in the air. Like people have been trying to do projects and they get shut down because they're like, no, you don't have the rights to use that name, or you can't use these characters, or stuff like that was coming up. So a lot of projects, even Lana Quigley was actually fronting a like one of those online you give in money sort of thing to pay for crowdfunding it, and the movie was going to be called Trash's Revenge. And while the movie doesn't have the character of Trash still in it, it's another movie within the Unita universe and all that sort of thing. But after a while, it had to get shut down because of, again, no one had the solid rights to be able to produce this all sort of thing. And then now suddenly, as of December 15th, 2024, we now have a teaser trailer, which is just a quick little thing that is put out there. It's only about 30 seconds long. It's a $50,000 trailer that they put together as proof of concept, and it looks like we're next Christmas. We're going to get, this Christmas, we're going to be getting another Return of the Living Dead, and this one actually drops so you're going to have the Return of the Living Dead and then Return of the Living Dead. So
Okay.
So it's an exciting time to be a fan of the series.
Sure. Yeah. It's I mean, we'll see. I would say that the series doesn't have a real cohesive feel to it.
Oh no. When you look at the 6 movies in total, I'm like,
6.
Okay,
wow. Okay.
The second one sort of seems like another story in the storyline, because you also have James Cairn and Tom Matthews returning to the movie, but in different roles. The Colonel from this movie is the same as the second movie, but then you get into the third one, then you're really going off the rails, because then you got an actual an army facility that is dealing with creating zombie soldiers because they don't die and all that sort of thing. And then you get into the European market that starts picking up, like Metropolis and the City of the Dead one and whatnot. And it's all like, hey, let's go over to Uruguay and pay for really cheap labor and whatnot to pull off our direct to DVD movies.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah. So it'll be exciting to see where this, I mean, if it, like you said, if it picks up right after and has a similar feel to it, I'll definitely be excited to check it out.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I'll watch it anyway, but right.
So, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Whether or not, I'm probably going to watch it anyways. Yeah. But it'll be nice to be able to see it in a theater, though. That's the kind of neat thing that I'm looking forward to. Like, whether or not it's good, which I'm all hoping that it will be, but I think it's going to be fun to be able to see this movie, because that's the one thing I haven't been able to do, is see this movie in a theater. There's been a couple of repertory theaters that have over the years had shown it, but it's always been like, I got to work, or I can't get there, or something like that. So I've always missed seeing in a crowd, but so
there's a drive-in theater about an hour and a half west of here in Pennsylvania that has that does a lot of retro horror stuff, and
nice.
There's a company called Exhumed Films that hunts down good copies, prints of classic movies like that. Like, he's got probably the best known 35 millimeter print of Killer Clowns.
Nice.
That kind of stuff. And they do have a copy of this that they've shown. I've never been out there to see it, unfortunately. I think it's shown once or twice in the 7 or 8 years that I've lived here. So but word on the street is it's not an awesome copy. So maybe I missed that and didn't miss much, but
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So do you have any other social media that you want to like promote yourself for? Because we're just going to wrap this up. If you want to tell the audience where they can look for your stuff, or
no. I mean, we've sort of killed the social media as the podcast
gotcha.
Ended, and most of it is just go to edgeoftomorrowminute.com. We pay an extra like $30 a year to have a custom URL, so please use it, for God's sakes. I mean, it's there for you. edgeoftomorrowminute.com, or you could find your way through the like Libsyn secret URLs if you want to, but just edgeoftomorrowminute.com. It's the easiest way.
Excellent. Okay, so we'll just wrap this. Like I said, we'll just wrap up this particular episode.
Great.
David, I want to thank you very much for joining me. This was fantastic. Your insight was great to get and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, thanks. It's fun.
Yeah, I hope that maybe I can tag you in for a future minute, because I mean,
for sure,
you know the movie, you know what we're about to run into soon, so we're gonna have a lot of nonstop action sequences coming up in the. Well, I'm like I said, I'm doing this weekly, so I'm playing out this until February 2026. So I'm gonna be at this for a little while. So hopefully I can tag you in for an episode or two in the future.
Yeah, sign me up.
All right. I want to thank you, audience, yet again for joining us here. And to those that are dropping by and hanging on, small numbers, but one every week or two is nice to see. The number is slowly growing. If you want to talk to us about anything we've seen in this episode or something in the past, or maybe even in the future, drop a comment in the episode you're listening to, or send us an email at planetgeekpod@gmail.com. We can continue on the conversation there, or maybe roll it into a future episode and maybe even get you in as a guest host as well, because hey, if you want to be a guest host, I'll take almost any comers right now.
It's a short runway, really.
It is a very, yes, it definitely is. It definitely is. So once again, David, thank you. Once again, audience, thank you. And I got nothing else to say until see you next Wednesday. You've just been listening to a Planet Geek production of Do You Want a Party? A Movies by Minute podcast of the 1985 The Return of the Living Dead. Please be sure to subscribe, download, comment, share, rate, and review. Be sure to follow us on our social media platforms: Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Tumblr, or Letterboxd. Search for Planet Geek Productions. X, former Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky, search for Planet Geek Pod. Or send us an email to planetgeekpod@gmail.com. Our closing music is provided by Night Chill. See the show notes for more details. Once again, thanks for tuning in, and farewell, fiends.
Okay, think I'm back.
Yep, there you go. Now, is that like a little Cthulhu, like Dr. Seuss sort of?
Oh, yeah, that little icon. Yes,
yeah,
it
yeah.
sure is. Yeah,
that's cute. That is so cute.
It was actually, I'm trying to remember. Somebody had made them to look like the original Twitter bird. Like if you remember the
okay, yeah.
Yeah. So there was a Cthulhu one. There was a Galactus one.
Okay.
I don't remember where I collected them from, but like I put it in somewhere as an icon and it just follows me around. So.
Nice. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
All right. I will talk at you later. And like I said, I'll tap you in in the future, and that'd be great.
If no one has claimed the Send More Cops minute, you can definitely put me down for that one. So
I don't believe anyone has. So let me write out a note. All right, I'll go to my spreadsheet and go, where does this fall?
Yeah, I don't know.
And I'll put your name tentatively in as the guest host. Excellent.
Cool.
All right, talk to you later.
All right, thanks.
Bye-bye. No, thank you.